21st century jobs require that our students graduate with not only a strong foundation in reading, writing, math, and other core subjects, but also in the ability to think critically, communicate effectively, and be able to solve complex problems. For example, is it a result of trying to teach a set of skills and knowledge needed for a 21st century economy in a school day designed for the industrial age and a school year based on an agrarian calendar? Do schools need more time to help students reach higher expectations? Or is it because educators do not have the curricular tools and training they need to create rich, interdisciplinary courses that teach reading and math without losing students' interest? We have Eric Schwarz, the co-founder and CEO of Citizen Schools, a nonprofit organization that partners with middle schools to expand the learning day for low-income children to engage students and increase achievement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm with Citizen Schools, and for 15 years we've been working with school districts, now 18 across the country, large communities, small communities, urban and rural, to dramatically expand the learning day, turning that 6 to 7 hour agrarian era schedule into a 9 to 10 hour learning day, and filling up those extra hours with real world learning opportunities where kids get a chance to be producers and learn with experts from the community, as well as a skilled staff of second shift educators. As one example, we worked last year across the country with 100 engineers from Google who had a chance to work with our middle school kids in the afternoon hours to actually design video games. Not just play video games, but design video games, learning algebraic concepts in the process. The main point I'd like to make today that the whole child approach is not sort of just a touchy-feely approach to making kids feel good. It's an essential element of driving up proficiency, of driving up graduation rates, of driving up college readiness. And I want to illustrate that just telling a brief story about one school in Boston, which is our home community, the Edwards Middle School. And 4 years ago, the Edwards Middle School struggled. It was the lowest performing middle school in the city. Only 17 families the previous year had chosen to send their kids to the school. It had a typical 6 hours and 20-minute stay. In a partnership with Citizen Schools, the school went from a 6 hour and 20-minute day to a 9 hour and 20-minute day. They became the first middle school in the city to have a football team and a dance program, but they also offered every kid through Citizen Schools 4 apprenticeships a year, academic coaching, an extra hour a day of academic coaching. And that school went from worst to first in the last 3 years. It's now the highest performing middle school in Boston. It's closed 80% of the achievement gap in science and English with state averages and created a reverse achievement gap in math. And we think the Edwards is a leading example of what we can bring to the country, not just Citizen Schools, but other organizations on this panel, partnering with schools to dramatically expand the learning day in a very high quality way, focused on results. Thanks very much for the chance to speak with you today.
We're talking about adding on to the student, adding on different things to these students, longer school days. Who was it that added 650 hours? Ms. Jeffries is talking about that. And others are talking about longer school days. Mr. Schwarz, you talked about that, longer school years. So you're adding this on to the students, but it seems to me that you have to be careful about how do you keep the students interested? And secondly, if you're going to add all this stuff on, doesn't this require more personnel? I mean, this requires, can you ask a teacher now, okay, teacher, you're putting in 10 hours a day, now you got to put in 16 hours a day.
And I think the worst thing we could do is take a failing school with a disengaged kid and add more of the same. And that's been tried. A number of districts have just extended the day by an hour or two with the same teachers using the same techniques, and the research is in, it's not working. What can be done, though, in an expanded learning time environment and can be done well, is to use the extra time as a lever for reform in the whole day. And it does need to be, I think, what we've been referring to as a second shift of educators. Some of them AmeriCorps members, recent college graduates, and community members serving as mentors, tutors, and trainers of the young kids. So I think an after-school or expanded learning time approach that adds those 3 or 4 hours of additional learning, but makes it different. It has to be hands-on, interesting, fun, engaging, get the kids out doing field trips to science museums and colleges, and doing the kind of things that have been too often squeezed out of the regular school day. Adding back in arts, music, athletics, apprenticeships. If you do that, you're going to have a chance for kids to get engaged in learning, get excited about learning. You're going to give the teachers in the school more training opportunities. We see our regular school day teachers doing training alongside our AmeriCorps teaching fellows. And both of them learning a great deal, and then we bring into the mix scientists and other members of the community that can bring learning alive in powerful ways as well.
But right now, everybody at the local level is wrestling with a diminished level of resources on what they had before and a bunch of rules and regulations that may or may not actually reflect outcomes for kids or be the best things for kids.
I want to thank you for the question, reinforce what several panelists have said around the need for greater investment overall in education, and yet ask us to think hard about why we're not getting bigger gains in places where we're investing healthy amounts of money today. I was in Newark, New Jersey yesterday, where Citizen Schools have been operating for several years, and they're spending $19,000 to $20,000 per student in that district and not getting good results. I think part of it is because of the issues you raised of funding streams that are very specific rules and regulations around them, and I support the idea of finding more ways to open up funding to creative results-based programs and let those decisions be made at the local level. I think this is an effort to try to find ways in the after-school and expanded learning time space to increase resources, but also increase flexibility and allow school systems and nonprofits to move forward with an expanded learning approach and/or an after-school approach that fits their needs. I also think it may make sense in some areas to look at nationally administered competitive grant programs that can help identify the strongest programs, the most effective interventions, and try to scale them and do better research around them so that we can build the knowledge base around what's working and we can have the capital to support high-quality initiatives that are getting results for kids and create through that better results that will get synergy and get momentum at the local level.
Paying $19,000 per student in and this is in a district, in a school district. Mm-hmm. With that, I mean, they ought to be great. But so why $19,000 a student per year, per annum? Mm-hmm. And you're saying they're not getting good results? I mean, that's mind-boggling. Why? Is it what Mr. Candace said? They're just spending more money doing the same old thing, and they're not getting any change? I
think part of it is inertia, sort of piling more things on without getting rid of the things that aren't working. Part of it is speaking more to the interests of adults than the interests of kids. Part of it is a lack of rigor around taking new approaches, and when things work, invest more to growth.
But what we have to recognize here also is that education, elementary and secondary education, is basically a local responsibility. Wrap up here. Have you all looked at the proposed Common Core standards that I think 48 states have agreed to sort of adopt or work on, and it's something that we've been trying to promote today?
I'd love to applaud the approach you're all taking on the committee to move the standards forward, and Secretary Duncan for his effort and his statement to be strong and clear on outcomes and loose on means. And I think what the standards can do, if they're done right, is be very clear about the destination, where we're trying to get all of our kids to a level of proficiency across a broad set of skills, including 21st century skills, including thinking skills. And then it's up, I think, to the programs on this panel and those we represent and thousands more like us to figure out the best way to get there. And to do that in very creative ways that are engaging and hands-on and fun. Because you can get a kid to proficiency in algebra in a number of ways. And too often, the current methods have not been working, and so most kids aren't getting to proficiency in algebra. We're finding some success with developing curriculum around video game design, just to give that one example, where kids are learning algebraic concepts. They're also learning to be producers, not just consumers of technology, and they're learning algebra, and they're getting to those high standards and getting to high thinking skills through a hands-on, real-world approach. I think that's what some of the folks on this panel can do, and what the clear standards can create the environment for that kind of creativity to happen.